Welcome to the UST Education recorded webinar series. This session is powered by US Transactions. UST is a boutique payment processing firm providing you with personalized service. We offer agnostic, best fit technology solutions for associations, nonprofits, and enterprise clients.
And thank you for the introduction. I'm Andrew Good. I am CEO of Liberty Grove Software. Been working with NAV and its predecessor products, Navision and NAV, for over 24 years now. I believe in training to the point that I am now a Microsoft certified trainer. I said I'm now a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm now in my 17th year of being an MCT. And in the province of Ontario in Canada, I'm a professional engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. And as you can see from some of the pictures, this is what I like to do when I'm not dealing with Business Central. Being in Ontario, this is a summertime activity. So with that, let's get going and learn a little bit about what is happening with the product. With Business Central, there are two main releases every year, and those releases occur in April and October. There are minor releases every month, but Microsoft packages up the main features and improvements and rolls them out through the major releases. So we're going to focus on the release that came out this month. And you'll get a chance to find out what's been added, and as well a bit of vision down the road in terms of some of the other things that will be coming this year. We'll look at BC, we'll go through the functionality, and we'll show a couple of key new reports that have been updated as part of the current release. So BC started out as a single user version in 84. It's evolved and migrated. It's come a long way in the last 2-3 years in particular, and is gaining even greater momentum as it moves forward. As you can see, we now have a new logo amongst a lot of good technical and functional changes in the package. We're going to look at the new features. They're going to be grouped into functional areas. So I'm starting out in the finance area, and we're going to, I'm going to explain each of these as we go, and we'll dive into a couple of them as well a little bit later. So self-billing for purchases. Well, what does that mean? Well, self-billing for purchases is you might be working with a small local company, and that local company wants you to withhold and or remit taxes on behalf of, sorry, record the transactions and then provide that invoice back to them. Related to this is calculating the withholding taxes for the vendor. So this is where I was going initially. When you are dealing with a small vendor, they may want you to uh, do the withholding and remit that to the state or federal authority on their behalf. So you now have functionality in the product to calculate those taxes, manage that, and administer it. So this is really you providing a service to your vendor. The other area, traditionally around expenses, employees would submit expenses. And they might get recorded as purchase invoices or journals in Business Central, and um, wasn't completely grouped together. You would typically use an ISV to help you collect those expenses and manage them in Business Central. So now BC has some base functionality around expense reporting and expense reports so that you can group your expenses together for a given trip or activity or conference and manage the processing of that. So there is a general theme underway as well for environmental impact. So there are taxes that are being applied in different jurisdictions related to the inclusion of plastics in your product, and there may be taxes that you need to collect based on that. Similarly, related to healthy eating, sugary drinks is an area that um, has been a focus, or added sugar in products. So there is an ability now in Business Central to calculate the taxes related to your plastic content or your sugar content, and gives you some additional tools that you didn't have previously. Related to taxes, you now have the ability in Business Central to calculate excise taxes. Now, traditionally, with Business Central, excise taxes, things that had excise taxes were not a good fit from our perspective as a partner. So getting this functionality in allows us to help more customers, and Business Central is a better fit for more customers as well. So we're going, the next one is enabling the investment boost related to fixed assets. What this relates to is there are a number of programs underway right now to encourage investment and capital investment. And this essentially, and the concept, if you dig into the Learn documentation for this, is you may be able to, when you activate your asset, write off an additional, say, 20%. Once you write that 20% off, now you're left with a remaining asset value equal to 80%, and then you can take that 80% and subject it to the normal fixed asset depreciation books that you've defined for your system. So you're able to handle that initial investment credit or boost option that is available from a number of agencies. So we're going to move over into sales and purchasing. And you'll see there's a bit of a theme here, starting out with drop shipments. So this is an area that got some attention in this particular release. So you can go in and you can post your purchase invoice independently. So it doesn't have to be posted in lockstep with your sales invoice. So previously they were tied together tightly, and now they are related, but you can post it independently. One of the other things that happened was once you recorded a shipment related to a drop shipment, fixing that or correcting that became very tedious. So that has been improved. You now have the ability to go in and reverse a shipment as long as you haven't gone and invoiced that related purchase nor sale. So if you haven't processed the invoices, you can go ahead and reverse the shipment, make your adjustments, and then repost the shipment. The other thing too is traditionally drop shipments, you had to go through a worksheet to generate your purchase orders, or you had to go to a purchase order and you had to get drop shipments. Now you have the ability to create the PO directly from a sales order. So as you can see, Microsoft's focused on this. They've enhanced some of the functionality that made it easier to work with a number of these key issues. Email notifications. This is something that's been around for a while. Think of sales order confirmations, the ability to email out a sales invoice or a quote. So now you have the ability to email out information about your sales shipments as well as your return receipts. So now you can send out that confirmation that the product has indeed shipped as well. Once you've received a customer return, you can email out a confirmation saying, hey, your return has been received. Expect our normal review and returns process to take another 7 to 10 days. Again, it's configurable. Those are just examples. In the sales and purchasing area, there are functions when you're on a sales invoice or you're on a purchase invoice to go out and get activity. You can go out and get posted purchase receipts. You can go out and you can get posted shipment lines and pull those into an invoice directly. Those get functions have been enriched with some additional filters to make it easier to zero in on the particular transactions that haven't been invoiced yet and allow you to get at that information better. So just again, an improved experience around the invoicing process. And that's why it's get dot dot dot. We have enhanced purchase invoicing. So the ability to go and get order lines. So you may receive a vendor invoice. That vendor invoice might actually be related to 2 or 3 of their shipments, or potentially 2 of 3 of your purchase orders that they included in one transaction. So now you're able to go and retrieve lines from different purchase orders and track that those lines have been invoiced. So get order lines is a new function, and helps you to deal with those invoices where your vendors have multiple POs contained within one invoice. The description 2, this field has been around for a long time. It's sort of the underutilized field because it just wasn't on a lot of pages. It's on, for instance, the item card, you have description and description 2. So typically, if your description didn't fit, you would add description 2, but it didn't display in very many places, required a customization, typically either through your own developers or working with your partner, but you had had to customize BC to add this field to a number of pages, or go into the role centers and add it in. It's now a base field, and it's been added to a number of different pages in BC. We're going to switch gears and look at supply chain and inventory. Quality management, this was called out in the fall. So this is now fully available in the product. So it is a bit of a repeat in terms of making sure you're aware that it's here. It allows you to perform inspections on incoming goods and address some of those key security activities that you may want to have to support your business, or transition off of, perhaps, paper, spreadsheets, or external quality systems. Item variants, the ability to add pictures. Well, traditionally, you could add pictures to item cards, but your item variants, which might be your different colored coffee makers, you had a picture and that was your item picture. Now you can actually have pictures of your different color coffee makers. We'll have a quick look at this in the BC in a moment, and we'll see where this sort of comes together shortly as well. Item variants and the item attributes. Well, item attributes, as the name implies, it's tied to the base item itself. But again, let's talk about coffee makers. If you have your coffee makers that are red, black, and silver, and you had an attribute called color, well, you could only tie one color to the item. Now you can have a different color per attribute. And again, we'll see how this supports some of the other changes in the system. One area of this from an approvals perspective, we've had approvals, or AKA workflows, for a long time in Business Central. Here, you've got the ability to now apply approvals to item journals. So those miscellaneous inventory transactions where, people are really posting things related to your company assets. We found things, we lost things, we damaged things. Those can now go through the approval process. And similarly, as people are planning to do their replenishment of inventory, the planning worksheets and the requisition worksheets now have approvals and workflows tied to them. Really nice feature. It's something that we as a partner have built previously for customers to put approvals in place, because people are making decisions that are going to have impacts in the tens, hundreds, or millions of dollars worth of impact to a business in terms of having to buy more raw material or carrying more inventory. So now you can apply the approval process and tie that directly into planning. So planning, locations without SKUs. SKUs are stock keeping units. Stock keeping units by design and are typically used to represent the item and location specific information. So if you think about this from a national company perspective, where you have an East Coast location and a West Coast location, and most of your product is imported, so it gets imported into the West Coast location, and then you use that location to replenish your East. Traditionally, you can set planning parameters up at the item level, and then you can set planning parameters at a stock keeping unit level. And if a location didn't have a stock keeping unit defined, by default, um, Business Central goes ahead and uses the item planning parameters to support the planning. However, you might have a third location, we'll call it South, and you don't want that item in the South because, selling snow shovels in Houston doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So you deliberately didn't create a stock keeping unit. Well, Business Central is going to go to the item card, look at in the past, look at the parameters that are defined on the item card, and as long as South is one of the locations you're planning for, it's going to plan to put product in that location. So now you've got more control. If you don't have that SKU, then that item, the snow shovels for Texas, can be ignored, and the lawnmowers that are going to be used in California and the East Coast and Texas can be planned for every location because you have a SKU in all three locations. Copilot, can't go through a presentation without talking about Copilot and AI, but the expense agent is, I've got TBD. I don't have a definitive date when this is going to become available. The underpinnings, the expense reports are part of the product. The expense agent will be coming. I just don't know when. Also introduced in the prior version last month is a configurable agent in Business Central. Why would you want a configurable agent? Well, those of you that work with BC on a regular basis, people perform a lot of similar tasks, but not exactly the same. So the configurable agent allows you to build an agent to address your pain points in your organization. And that leads to a whole other discussion around agents and configuring and data and governance. But you now have a tool in Business Central to allow you to build a configurable agent. For the heck of it, I just, my initial test was I went in and said, hey, I need a list of all customers that have overdue or have outstanding balances, and the balances are overdue. Provide me with a list that shows me the customer and the overdue balance. And then, I could take that from an agent perspective, add more tasks to it and say, great, now create reminders for each of these customers and then email the reminders out. So you could configure all of that in BC. So you would have a review process. You could then automate or semi-automate depending on what makes sense for your organization. Gives you an awful lot of control. Improved troubleshooting for MCP server and AL. Yes, this is just rolls off the tongue. And in this particular case, an MCP server is a server that sits outside of Business Central and allows your AI agents to make their queries essentially into the MCP server to expose in a controlled way your Business Central data. So that's what an MCP server is. It's that hub where those AI requests go from outside of BC to provide BC data. From the AL is the programming language in Business Central. From an AL perspective, you didn't have a lot of tools for troubleshooting the MCP server. So that has been enhanced as well to make it easier to enhance the MCP server and troubleshoot it. E-commerce. This is where we're going to start to tie in some of those supply chain comments that and features I talked about a few minutes ago. So update to the latest connector. Well, Shopify, much like Business Central, has multiple releases or new versions of the product. And you now have the ability in Business Central to make sure you're using the most current connector between Business Central and Shopify so that you've got the latest features available. Again, this is an area that continues to get a lot of focus, and the feature sets are enriched and issues are identified and addressed. Collections is the next one. Collection synchronization. Well, what's a collection? Well, a collection might be something like, oh, a white polo shirt or a polo shirt in a particular style. And a collection would be the fact I have different colors. I've got white, I've got blue, I've got red. And in addition to that, I have, small, medium, large, extra large, you know, medium tall, large tall, extra large tall. So now all of a sudden you start to think about, well, I have three colors and I've got five, six different styles. I've got an awful lot of different options. But when I get to a Shopify site, I really want to display an icon that shows a polo shirt with the little color knobs underneath so you can pick them. And once you do that, you can go in and you can select your size. What I'm describing there is a collection. Well, on the BC side, what does a collection look like? A collection looks like probably an item and a whole series of variants. So the variants might be described with color and size. And the item attributes allow us to go in and, or starting with the item itself, that's our polo. And then we have the variants that, a red small, a white small, a blue small. Those would be three separate variants. Now I can have three separate pictures of those particular products, and the item attributes on those variants can specify the color. So those item attributes are then used in that synchronization process to allow Shopify to identify that everything that's A related, and then B, when it puts it on the website, it can, you know, structure that so that you get the polo shirt, you have the color choices, and then you have the size choices. So the item attributes as product options, that's what I've just been talking about. And now we're going to switch gears just a little bit related to Shopify. Shopify will allow you to take or receive payments in different currencies. So I could have USD, I could have CAD, I could have Euro. And traditionally, when you synchronize those transactions back into Business Central, they get recorded in your home currency. So if you're in the United States, USD. If you're in Canada, CAD. If you're somewhere in Europe, euros. So now what you can do is when you have a foreign currency transaction, foreign compared to your home currency, you're able to create a sales order in BC in that matching currency. So important when you're dealing with multiple currencies. And the other thing you can do now is we can include in the sync packages the images. So those images that were now on our item card, we can now carry through into Shopify and make available from a user experience perspective. Manufacturing is another area that's had some focus, and there are improvements coming in around subcontracting. There have been some improvements previously made. This has been extended to include more logistics information around, excuse me for that. One moment. And we'll continue on. So subcontracting the logistics around warehouse handling and item tracking. Uh, what does that mean? Well, you now have the ability to determine, how you want to use picks and other activities for subcontracting. Uh, Oftentimes with subcontracting in the past, it was very basic related to moving components, and it was also very basic as it related to handling the goods that were returned to you from your subcontractors. Also, traditionally with pricing, you would go in and at the routing line level, you would specify, I need to go out and get something plated, and it's going to cost me 10 cents a part. So that would be right in the routing line. That doesn't work so well when you've got, you're producing the same part in, two different parts of the country, or you've got something in New York City and you get something down in Georgia, and in Georgia it's 8 cents apart, in New York City it's 13 cents apart. Now you've got more flexibility to set pricing either by vendors and locations, so you've got a lot more control there. It just enriches that whole experience. Receiving, including item tracking and warehouse handling. Item tracking, which is, the corresponding lot numbers and or serial numbers for an item. This was always a little rough around the edges in Business Central, so it's been improved so that you can uh, keep track of, record your item tracking, and that information is integrated with the warehouse handling as well. And just overall improve visibility of what's happening within subcontracting. Some general usability improvements, serial tracked items. Okay, what would this be? Well, when you are reporting production and you're manufacturing serialized items, and maybe you're going to make 10 of them, traditionally what would happen if you use the output journal or you use the production journal, Business Central would say quantity 10, and then you had to drill down and you had to then put in 10 item tracking lines, one for each serial number, return and post the transaction. And same thing in both cases, the output journal and the production journal. So now what happens is when you explode your routing, or you open up your production journal and the outputted item is a serialized item for a quantity of 10, you'll now be presented with 10 lines where you can go in directly in the journal, you can assign the serial numbers and post your transaction. So it just streamlines that experience. So that's what the usability improvement is around serial tracked items. Locations respected for capacity and overhead. Well, we talked a moment ago about subcontracting and posting transactions. Well, this kind of ties in as well. Your financial activity as it relates to manufacturing is defined in your inventory posting setup. And traditionally, it was blank location and then the general product posting group that was used to determine where your transactions got posted. So now what happens is locations are respected. So if I have capacity related to my south operation, I can go in and I can define location and control where that goes in my general ledger. And my east location can post to a different GL account, and my west location can post to a different one, giving you more control over how you record that activity. And then the WIP posting improvements are put in place related to this, so that if you have put something into WIP in South and then you go to relieve inventory and you put $100 in, it's going to ensure that you take for that production order, that corresponding $100 out of that particular account and not out of a general nondescript account. So it's applying controls to keep your reconciliation, when you reconcile, to keep that from getting out of control. Adding more controls, making it more robust and error proof. BOMs routings, non-certified warning. Well, as you're working with BOMs and routings, they have statuses. Those statuses allow you to have um, work with a brand new BOM or take a certified BOM and put it under development so that you can change it. And then if you leave that under development and go off to get a coffee or go to your next meeting, you start getting warnings like, oh, you have an uncertified BOM. Would you like to certify it? You can now configure when those warnings are displayed. So there's some general improvements made as well. The migration to the cloud, is picking up momentum, and Microsoft has made it easier to move data from any SQL Server version and migrate data to the cloud. Previously, it was tied to very specific versions. Related to permissions, as you add apps and functions to your system through apps, you sometimes lose track of what does this permission set allow me to do? What do user permissions allow me to do? Now you've got the ability to go in and audit either at a user level or a group level what the permissions are across applications. So not only the base permissions, but pulling in the permissions that came with that particular app. When an app's delivered, it can be delivered with its own permissions as well. Admin Center. So the Admin Center is your control panel for all of your environments. It's where you go to check on the current status of the versions of your products, control when they get updated, identify who's going to be notified, and so on. So you're able to connect now using AI agents coming through the MCP server into the admin center. So we've looked at agents earlier as configurable within Business Central. This allows you to actually start to set up agents that are monitoring your environment and can look at a variety of different things, whether it be telemetry and performance of the system. It can allow you to go in and on a regular basis, go in and make sure that all of your updates are always scheduled for a Friday or a Saturday night because, you're not working on Saturday and Sunday. So general improvements in that area, it's in a preview status. And there have been improvements made to the service contract orders, a little bit of attention there, and then some general development improvements. I'm not going to go through the specifics of those, but I am going to include some references at the end so that if you do want to investigate these a little further, you can. Reporting, financial reporting, the ability to add logos now into your financial reports. You have more control over how you want negative numbers formatted at a company level and then at an individual user level. And then we have the introduction of an audit log. Who ran which financial report? When did they run it? So these are things that haven't been in the system before and were requested changes. You can go in as well and schedule a financial report. So your operations managers need a report on their in their inbox by 7 a.m. Monday mornings. You can schedule a financial report to run on early Monday morning, and you can have a different report for the distribution team or the logistics team and so on, and send those reports out to different people at different points in time. And related to the API world, APIs are the tools that are in Business Central that expose your Business Central data to the outside world in a controlled manner. But you now have the ability for auditing workflows to be exposed and improved APIs so that permissions can be interrogated. So we're starting to see more control and functionality from outside of Business Central and the ability in a controlled way to connect it to the other outside world. Some reports in the inventory area, and Microsoft's going through a transition around reporting right now, and we'll talk about that in a moment, but there's a new Word report layout add-in for Word with the reports in Business Central. The newer ones come with a Word layout and or Excel layout as opposed to RDLC. RDLC is report description language client, to be specific. It's an older style of reporting, and it's being replaced release by release. Reports are being refactored and rebuilt. In the reporting realm as well, there's now a new subscription billing app available in Power BI. And the manufacturing app has been updated to include the subcontracting and around visibility as well. So that's what I highlighted visibility previously. So as you can see, some of these things get double mention. And inventory reports have been refreshed. A series of about 8 new reports have been added. A couple of the older reports have been removed, but they've been replaced by new features and functionality. And The other thing too with report layouts, you never you didn't have visibility or you didn't have the ability to essentially create a report layout in a draft status and then activated it at the appropriate point in time. So you now have a status feature available uh, within or to control your report layouts that are in use. So as we continue to look at Power BI, this has been an area of significant investment. There are a number of Power BI apps, and um, this is a really good place for people to be able to go and get an overview of what's happening in the system. BC is a tremendous transaction tool, and the Power BI leverages that to organize the data and display it in a meaningful way. Um, so there are a number of apps. I would encourage you to go ahead and download those apps and have a look at them to start to get a sense of what the possibilities are within Business Central for reporting. User experience. There is a new new property available, concealed type for sensitive data, so you can start to flag records as sensitive data. This is probably maybe a little more applicable in Europe, where sensitive data can be requested to be removed from the system. And as you're sharing data, you can go in and identify something as sensitive as well. So as more tools become available to look at your data, you want to be able to categorize or catalog your, what type of data you have available within the system. We're going to take a moment. We're going to look at a couple of screens as we get set to wrap up in our presentation. And with that, I'm going to just bring up my Business Central screen. So give me just a moment to do that. So we're going to go through and we're going to look at a couple of the inventory reports. We have a new inventory. We have a new top inventory report. And with this, we'll go ahead and for those of you that are not used to looking at the layouts that are in use, we'll quickly look here. We can see what layouts are defined for this particular report. We can see that this is the default layout and this is RDLC. And at this point, I'm going to go ahead and send the data and layout to Excel. Bring this over here. As I get the data, you can see that I need to go in and edit it. This looks like a very traditional report that we've seen out of Business Central for a long time. So we're going to go and look at our inventory. We're going to look at this particular report. We're going to rank 10 items. And in this case, oops, I selected the wrong one. We're going to select the top 10. And we'll send this. And I'm going to continue on. So there have been a number of general improvements made to the product, and within Business Central, you'll also now see that you have a configurable agent up here. You get a third hexagon that has an A, and then that becomes a configurable agent directly within your BC environment. Lastly, I want to just introduce you to the references. These references allow you to go in and use the BC YouTube channel, find out more about the base product. CentralQ.ai is a great AI tool for uh, asking questions about Business Central. It's got exposure to the Learn documentation and ISV documentation. So provides a very rich experience and really specific responses to your BC questions. The Learn documentation is extensive for each of the features that I've highlighted today. There is a version comparison. So if you're on an older version and you want to sort of compare your version to the new version, that's what the enhancements by version link takes you to. And Microsoft has a ton of information about the product, and that's in the BC links at the bottom of the page. I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time today. And if you do have any questions, more than happy to answer those. At this point, though, I'm going to request that you go ahead and email me any questions you might have or contact me on LinkedIn. You can also use this QR code to find me. And with that, I'd like to wrap up my portion of the presentation.